Thanks to all the sirs and ma'ams for taking us back to the Jesus time. Dr. Solomon, when he said he has taken us back to his father's life and death. When somebody dies, people say good words. When somebody is sick, people say encouraging words. Gospels, the four Gospels, have these 7 sayings. Which category do they belong? These are the words spoken by Jesus himself, but recorded by 4 evangelists. So I would call this as a tributes by 4 evangelists. Why all the sayings were not recorded by all the gospel writers? We say gospel according to. So maybe what they remember, the sources that they had. We thank God that those are there. The 6th saying, it is finished, is recorded in John chapter 19. John records 3 sayings. So I had a question when I started thinking about what to share. Why all the 7 are not recorded by one gospel writer? And why selective? Why these 3? That is turning to his mother and saying women, then saying thirsty, and the last word. Then my attention fell on John's portrayal of these 3 sayings, which I would call tribute, even though tributes and the sayings need not be the same. Because the gospel writer has his own purpose, why he recorded those 3 sayings of Jesus. There are important words that he picks up or he mentions, which also are given by some other gospel writers. But to me, these are repeated more often than others. Even though Matthew seemed to be writing for the Jews, quoting the Old Testament, but still John uses the words like it is written, scripture, fulfilled, knowing that. What are these catchwords signify, and what this 6th word, it is finished, signify for John as he records these 3 sayings? As I told you, I take it as a tribute, John's tribute. John starts, unlike Matthew and Luke. Matthew and Luke start with birth narratives, but John starts with the incarnation of Jesus. And we are familiar with the idea of logos, that especially the prologue, John 1:1-16, has the word logos. Then I try to look that word logos throughout the gospel. Somehow the word is not exactly used the same way it is used in the prologue, but the idea is definitely there. The logos means a word. Logos can mean discourse. Logos can mean reason. Logos can mean a systematic study. That's how we get psychology and all other logies. Logos also can mean a rhetorical persuasion. When I see this word, 6th word, and the gospel as a whole, it made sense to me that he has a tribute to pay these 3 sayings of Jesus. In the prologue, he starts saying that the Logos, the Word, is God himself. He is coexisted with the God the Father, but he became incarnated, he became man. But I did not choose to write the birth narratives as other two gospel writers had written. He wants to emphasize that word, God, Logos became flesh. God himself became a flesh. Then after the prologue, unlike other gospel writers, John has a selective events and selective sayings. He has 7 signs and 7 sayings. Why 7? When you compare Mark, which is shorter, and Matthew and Luke, and compare with John, the signs nothing but the miracles, which John chooses to use the word sign to say that it signifies something that is going to come after his earthly life. Why 7? And all are lengthy compared to other miracles in other gospels. Even the sayings are elaborated, and that's where the idea of a discourse comes. In the prologue, he has the word, literal word, that God became man, incarnate. Then the rest of the gospels, he discourses picking up 7 sayings and 7 signs and elaborate them and involves people even in that discourse. And they also add their comments as he tells the sayings of Jesus and the doings of Jesus. Coming towards the end of this main body of the book, he records this, what I would call tribute. The 3 sayings have, as Albert Sir has mentioned, that John Gospel want to address one ideology of that time, maybe Ebionites or other the cultics of that time. This is a gospel, an apology to them. He shows that this passage, this tribute of John, he starts saying that soldiers were distributing the clothes that Jesus wore. That is the last earthly possession Jesus had, because he could come up to the Golgotha, and that is the last possession as a human being. He discarded or he gave away that possession. Then John records his mother. That's the last relationship that one can give up. When we get into trouble, the first word that we get is mother or ma. And that's the last thing one can, last relationship one can leave. Jesus was willing to leave that last relationship. And he also recorded, I thirst. Again, this is the last, maybe the last drops of water that is there in his body. That is emptying himself. So he emptied his possessions and relationships, and now whatever he himself has, the last drops of water or blood and water vanishing. And as Albert Sir said, he was hesitant to take that drink because he wanted to give up everything. The gospel writers had shown that God himself is, the Logos is God, and that through his doings and sayings, he discoursed that he is the Lord himself. And coming to the last and the 6th word, tetelestai, one word, unlike other sayings, it is a one word, and Jesus shouted from the cross, "It is finished." The finishing, "it is finished," can be a pessimistic or fatalistic saying, I can't do anything more. That's it. I'm done. That is not the finishing. It is a shout of accomplishment. It is completed. We had seen that he said, it is written, it is written. What all he needs to do, he has done. Then it is, he says it's completed, but completion with accomplishment. He accomplished what he wanted or what is written and what is designed by God. And it is a shout of victory. It is not that somehow he finished and got his degree, but rather it was a shout of victory. He finished well. And that's what John wants to pay tribute, saying that he discarded everything earthly, his possessions, his family, and whatever he has, everything he has, including his blood and sweat, everything he had given, and finally says, it is won, or the victory is won. This is the sixth saying of Jesus. But a gospel writer doesn't stop there. If it says that it is finished, even the 7 sayings, one more is there. But gospel writers, more than other gospel writers, he says that still there are 2 more chapters. The 2 more chapters, he says, now it is your task to finish. Jesus, as the Son of God, he finished, but from the next 2 chapters, other gospel writers also mention, but he elaborates, as he has that tendency of elaborating. He elaborates saying that there is a task that everyone has to do. This gospel, more than other gospels, have implication to us as a Caleb. Caleb is educational institution, theological training program. From this saying, or a gospel as a whole, we have implication. If you read the last 2 verses, very, very interesting, that he uses, he repeats what he has been saying throughout the gospel. The words like, again, written, testimony, books. He finishes saying a task to be finished by us. Jesus has finished with this 6th saying, but he continues the gospel saying, we have implications. I just thought about what he had written in the last 2 verses, that is a disciple. That means the one who received and accepted. And this gospel, both Luke and John mentions the literary aspect of writing, that Luke also says that it is an orderly account in the beginning, and John gives at the end his purpose, and also mentions the literary activity of the gospel writer, and he says he's a disciple, the one who received that written word or spoken word. The implication is that we need to read. A disciple is one who follows, observes, reads the master's sayings, master's doings, and the gospel is nothing but signs and sayings, 7 signs, 7 sayings. And the disciple is expected to read, reason, receive with conviction, and we also retell, that is, we preach, we share, we teach. We also, and he says, it is trustworthy. His testimony is right. That means he has researched, just like Luke also mentions that Luke and John indicated that they are researchers. there's also one challenge he gives, that there are so many things that I could not write, even though I have written 21 chapters, though the chapter calculation is human, but still, though a number of the miracles are less, but he elaborated. The last challenge he gives, that there is a lot to be written, lot to be recorded, and the whole world is there to preach. So the last, that unfinished task should be carried by you and me. And the last thing he mentions about books that we need to read, reason, research, retell, and even publish. May the Lord help us as we hear the tribute of John, giving the whole gospel under the word Logos, the Logos that became incarnate, Logos that is discoursed, and Logos that challenges us, that we have implications as an academic community. And let us take this and fulfill God's unfinished, unfulfilled desire for our own existing society. May the Lord help us to fulfill and finish our task.